Hi there, I am Gray. So today I'm gonna talk about assignment 2. In this assignment, we need to create a RESTful web service with a Spring Boot application, and we need to use the database. We need to perform some CRUD operation, add in musician, get all musician, update the musician, and then deleting the musician. So this is my application. So in this application, first of all, this is our this is our model musician Java class, and we have three properties: ID, name, and expertise. And we have a getter and setter methods, and a main constructor and a constructor with three properties. And we put the annotation, entity, and the ID. So it was our entity musician model. And so we have an interface. This is our repository, and we extend to CRUD's repository. And then, so musician service is our the service class. And so we put the service annotation and the auto wired. So we are calling the musician repo. And then so we have some method that the first one is get all musicians. So first of all, we are creating an empty list object, and we are using the find all methods from our repository and assign to our the list object and return that. It was this method will return the all musician that we have. And the second one is that gets musician with the ID. So we are using a find by ID, and then we pass the musician ID. And if it is present, so we return this one. Otherwise, we return null. So the another one is that adding musician. So we are getting musician as a parameter, and then try to save this. If any error occur, return false, otherwise true. And the other one is that update musician. So we are getting a ID, musician ID as a string, and the object of the musician class. So inside the try and catch block, so first of all, we are using a find by ID, and then we pass the musician ID, and then we get this. So if a musician is exists, so we are assigned to our the new musician object, that musician update, and we are setting the name expertise with this the data that user passed. So this is how we date it. So we don't set the ID because ID is already come from as a string, and then we save this object, and if an error occur, return false, otherwise return true. And for the deleting musician, so we are getting the musician ID as a string, and inside the try and catch block, we use a delete by ID, and if we delete this one, depend on that, we return false or true. So it was our the service. I mentioned about the repo, I mentioned about the model, and this one is that for the REST controller. And again, we put the annotation auto wired. So we are using our service. And so we have some get requests or post requests. So first one is that the main route. So we are simply return a welcome message. And the other one is our path is all musician that return the all musician in our database. The next one is that is only return the specific musician using, so we use a path variable as an ID, and so we are passing this musician ID to our service, and if we found it, so we return. Otherwise, we return an empty. We are creating an empty object of musician class and return this. So for the post request, so we are adding a musician. So we are getting the data from the body, and again we are calling the service.addMusician methods, and then we pass the musician object data, and again we return this one. Depend on this is gonna, the service class is gonna return true or false, and that depend on that we return the data, otherwise return null. And for the put request, if so we are updating the musician object, so we are getting the ID as a path variable, and getting the musician object data from the body, and so depend on this return of false, so we are saying that updated successfully or couldn't update successfully. For the last method is that the deleting request, and path is musician. So, and we are using a request param instead of path variable. So ID is our the musician ID, and then we pass the musician ID. Depend on this process, it's return the string that deleted successfully or couldn't delete successfully. So we can use a postman and test it. So the first one is 8080 or main road. So when we click on this, it say that welcome. The other one is that return the all musicians. So I don't have a musician yet. And the next one is that only return the specific musician. So far we don't have a musician, and we can create a test musician. So click on the send button, and we are creating a post request. Click on this, so it's saved it, so we can create another one, and click on the send. So we create two musician. If we use the get all musician, so we will see that we have two musician. And if we want to see the specific musician, for example, musician 2, and it's returned only 2, or we can also return the 1. On this, it's also returned 1. So we create the musician. So we can update the musician that our path variable 2, and the ID is 2, name is same, and expertise is the test new. If we click on this, it say the update successfully, and we can check this specific musician, and so we will see that our expertise is updated, and we can get again, this is the old one. If you click again one more time, we will see that is updated, and we have so far 2 musician. If you delete this, for example, musician 1, we need to use a request param, and the ID is 1. If you click on this, so we delete this, and if we click on the get all musician, so we only see the ID 2. So we added the musician, get and displayed all musician, update the musician, and then delete the musician. So it was all my solution. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.